Hello. If you have been following my summer Space Marine project, you'll know that I've been building a retro Space Marine army that I can use in 2nd edition and 11th edition 40k. And my intention has been to gather up some of the coolest, oldest models that I really love, to put them on the table, to play a game of 11th edition against another retro army. It has been a lot of fun so far. And I have got some really cool updates today, because I'm going to be talking about my lore, the background for my army, and the painting of my army, because you're not going to believe it, but I've actually put some paint on some miniatures. Although, well, we'll see if it's enough for most folks, because it's a very, very Jordan version of painting miniatures. But I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the final piece of the puzzle in my collection and some other cool stuff as well. So this is my Space Marine Diary, Part 5. As you are watching this, or around about the weekend that this video has been published, I will have been fighting my actual game of 11th edition using this retro army. This is the thing that I've been working mostly towards over the course of this summer project. And it really feels like it's been a long journey, but it's only probably been 2 months or so. But I have been working towards a game at Warhammer World against none other than Wib from Snipe and Wib, using his retro Lamenters army that he built for 10th edition and has now updated for 11th edition as well. So those two armies will be clashing, and probably will have clashed by the time this video comes out, but I am right now really, really looking forward to it. And I'm going to be coming back in a future diary to talk about that game and to tell you how it went. I really cannot wait. It's so exciting. But right now, I'm going to talk about the actual process to finishing off the collection and putting some paint on these miniatures, as well as building my army list and a bit of lore to go with it as well. So let's start with that final piece of the puzzle. Now, you may remember from an earlier diary that I was trying to get hold of a specific set of Space Marines, Tactical Marines, because I wanted to have that Tactical Marine squad, but I wanted to go with a particular range of Jez Goodwin models and a particular boxed set. Now, I had some issues with eBay where I had bought a copy of that set from the States, which obviously, you know, there's a bigger cost to actually get it over here, but it was an incredible deal. There were loads of extras in there as well. I was really super excited. That didn't work out. It went to the wrong person. That person then did not return it, so I had to cancel that entire thing. I did get a refund, which is fantastic, but it was a huge waste of time and a load of extra stress, and, you know, just a bit of nonsense that was a shame. But thankfully, there was then another set of the Strike Force miniatures that came up for auction at a pretty reasonable price, and I was able to get hold of it. So I now have the Space Marine Strike Force boxed set. Now, this was an amazing RTB 15 release in about 1991. It was the 15th box set for the Rogue Trader era, and it features 3 Jez Goodwin Marines, or 3 sculpts, but there are 15 Marines in total. There are also plastic sprues, so the bodies are metal, but the actual arms, the pauldrons, the guns, the backpacks, they are all plastic. These miniatures, as you can see from the actual heavy metal versions, they look amazing when they're put together with skilled hands and painted in amazing heavy metal colours. They look awesome. I really, really like this set. I love this box. It is just absolutely incredible, and it feels like it fits perfectly with the Terminator squad, with the Land Raider. Obviously, I've gone for a later edition of the Scouts and a later Dreadnought. But yeah, I really, really wanted this box set because I think it's an amazing release. I think the miniatures in it are awesome. And I also wanted to be able to build a history video around this box set leading up to the release of this box set. It felt like a neat story to tell. So that video will be coming out on the channel soon. I was so excited to get hold of this. And it came with not all of the Space Marines, but most of them. And most of them were unpainted, had never been assembled. So I was like, this is perfect. I cannot wait to get involved. I, of course, forgot how, you know, especially for a hobbyist, a modeler like me who is not particularly skilled. I've been at it for many, many years, decades at this point, but I've never been a particularly skillful modeler. I've been able to do what was necessary in order to make an army, to assemble and paint an army, but rarely do I apply sort of technical skills or advanced skills. And I forgot just how fiddly and indeed annoying it can be to assemble metal miniatures, classic metal miniatures, with plastic components, especially when those plastic components are sort of interlinked. So these are independent arms that you have to put on each side of the body, and then the gun is between some of those arms. Now, I did not think to check the heavy metal pictures when I started assembling some of these models, and I didn't realize that in order to make the models look so amazing in all of the heavy metal photography, they basically clipped a load of the gun parts. They just clipped them away. So they would take off all of the sort of, the handles, the triggers and stuff like that. They took off the sort of shoulder brace on the bolters in order to make them one-handed in most instances. So most of the Marines in the pictures are just one-handed bolters, and the other hands are just fists or holding knives and stuff like that. I foolishly did attempt a couple of Marines holding the guns, so the kind of classic monopose look. That was a mistake. They do not look good. I have got a couple in my final fours, but yeah, they don't look fantastic. Just because they look like the angle that they're holding the gun looks really weird. Like they're holding the gun back to themselves or at weird angles. So there's a couple of Marines who do look really janky and stupid, but I'm going to live with it because that's just how I assembled them, and it's very true to me as a janky hobbyist. But I didn't want to just use these particular Jez Goodwin Marines. As much as I love them, I also wanted a bit more history scattered through this little tactical Marine squad as well. So I have also used a couple of RTB-01, the original plastic Marines, which I had gotten hold of in just a random assortment of plastic and metal bits that came with the Land Raider las guns that I had acquired. There is also an early metal Marine who is advancing and carrying a las gun. I can't remember, I think it's just called a heavy laser in the actual original miniature, but I'm going to use it as a las cannon. He's going to be my heavy for that particular squad. And then there is also a Space Marine Captain, a metal model that I actually got in a bargain box. So these are the old Citadel bargain boxes, which would be a random assortment of around about 8 metal miniatures from lines that they had too many of or weren't selling very well. So this is a completely random assortment. I really wanted to get hold of one of these boxes just as an artifact of history. So this one, fortunately, had a Space Marine in it as well. So I thought that was totally awesome. So I've actually used that. Originally, I was just going to leave this box as a complete thing, a set of random miniatures. But I thought I might as well make use of this Space Marine because it definitely fits into this army, and I need a captain for this squad. And alongside that 10-man tactical squad, I've also included as a leader within that squad a Tech Marine. Now, I've actually used an old Adeptus Mechanicus model who has got the power armor but is carrying the axe, an amazing classic miniature. I know it's not technically a Space Marine, but it feels very Space Marine-esque. He's even got the backpack on, so I think it fits in really nicely. And using the Tech Marine, I can then field the Land Raider, and I can also give enhancements to that Tech Marine, so I can make the tactical squad a little bit stronger in combat. So that is a bit of, making it work so that I can have everything I want in the army, and I can also get access to some of the cool 11th edition special rules in order to make them a little bit stronger. So that is the entire army. We have now got a Terminator squad. We've got a captain in Terminator armor, a librarian in Terminator armor. We've got a Tech Marine and a tactical squad of 10 Marines. We've got a scout squad with 1 sniper and 1 shotgun. And then we've got the Dreadnought and the Land Raider. That is the entirety of my army. It's something like 25, 26 or 7 models, including the vehicles. So a very small force. That is all I wanted. I didn't want to overwhelm myself with too much to paint. I actually have some other tactical Marines from this box set and some more RTB-01s and some other scouts as well. But I don't really want to include them in the army and field those. So that kind of feels like everything I want and need. And the army list that I've built using that comes to 970 points, which is perfect for the 1,000 point game that I've got planned with WIB. I don't think I need anything else. Obviously, that 30 points would be great. Maybe there is some extra heavy weapon I could have included or some other options I could have taken. But I don't feel too bad about squandering those extra 30 points. But with that, roughly 1,000 points for just those 3 squads and 2 vehicles. I know that's not a lot of flexibility, and I know as an army list, it's probably rubbish. Like, I have no doubt, especially based on the Necron game that I fought with a sort of trial prototype version of this army, I know that it is not particularly versatile, it's not particularly strong. But I kind of don't care. I think, yes, I want to put on a good show for my opponent, I don't want to waste their time, but I'm also there because this is an army that is just full of miniatures that I really, really like. It is a complete project that I was just super excited to do, and it is an excuse to get to the table and play some 11th edition. So, yeah, very pleased with what I've got, and I think, although I'm not optimistic that I will win, I think it will be a fun game, and that's kind of all that I'm about. So I'm looking forward to it a great deal. I have been tentatively looking at some 2nd edition games down the line, but this is kind of the culmination. This is the 11th edition game with 2 fully painted, and I will explain what I mean by that in a moment, with 2 fully painted armies that are retro themed but are designed for this new edition, at least in terms of the actual army list building. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. I kind of can't wait. And it's coming up first. I have mentioned before that I was really trying to come up with a way that was just like super simple, but which wouldn't be sort of embarrassing. I know that's the wrong term to use. It's up to me how I field my armies. Any paint is better than no paint. It doesn't have to be competition standard. It just has to be something I'm pleased with. So that's absolutely where I wanted to get to. But I also wanted to have an army that someone could come over and take a look at, and it would look like an army. It would look like deliberate choices had been made and some effort had been put into it. I've seen Wib's army. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I've seen other armies. This is a game at Warhammer World. For this, I wanted something a bit more stylish, I suppose. And I thought Space Marines were a good way to go because you can do very simple things to try and get something that looks okay. So I've used the Colourforge spray cans. I picked up some Imperial Purple and some Primark, their recent new Primark Purple paints, which is a lighter purple. And I have literally just used those 2 to do the whole army, more or less. So I've sprayed the darker purple over everything, and then I have done a Zenithal with the lighter purple to kind of create those sort of shadows, to create the contrast. This is something that I've seen as the starting point for some people who are, like Louis Sugden on Rogue Hobbies. You start from that and then obviously add a lot more to it and bring it to life. But even as a starting point, I think it's really, really nice. It kind of is this sort of abstract version. They kind of look like playing pieces from a board game or a chess set. There's kind of this very simple, stripped back feel to them that I really, really like. The intention is to then add more detail to it in time, but I haven't had time to complete all of that. So ultimately, I'd like to get to a place where I can edge highlight the Marines and I can add like the weapons, pick out the weapon detail, even if they are just black and silver. Just adding that contrast, I think, would be really good. But yeah, and then some basing materials as well to bring the bases to life a little bit more. But that's something I'll do eventually. For now, I have literally just done that with the Marines, with all of the squads. I have then put the black rim on the base to make it feel more intentional, to make it feel more finished. And I actually really, really like it. I've gone a little bit further with the vehicles. So the Dreadnought and the Land Raider, they've just got some additional things that have been picked out with the black paint. Literally, just, on the Dreadnought, it is the exhausts and it is the assault cannon. On the Land Raider, it's the tracks. And then I've done a little bit of edge highlighting as well, using Gene Stealer Purple to just contrast a little bit more with the 2 different purple sprays that are already been applied. Very, very simple. And I know this is not going to impress many people at all, but I am just really pleased with them. I think as a complete force, lined up, they look intentional. They look like I have made some choices and I've put a little bit of effort into them. Now, I know for a lot of folks, this is bare minimum. And yeah, I completely agree. It's not taking things, to where this hobby can go and where painters can do amazing things. But for someone like me who really struggles to get things painted and really struggles to find the time to do that part of the hobby. Not because I hate it, it's just not something I'm good at or that I get the most value from in my hobby time. I still like having painted miniatures. I love having a painted army, but getting to that is not something I tend to want to spend a lot of time on. So I know I've sort of rationalized all of this stuff here on the channel many, many times. But this is really just me sharing. This is my diary of this project. I wanted to get a painted army. I have done that. And it's a painted army that I feel that I can be proud to have on the table. I think it will look quite good on the table. Once the squads... It is a sea of purple. I totally get that. I think the black sort of breaks it up a little bit. I think with some additional details, that would be even more helpful, especially when it comes to like picking out particular members of a given squad would be helpful. I totally accept that. But I think on the table, this will probably look quite nice. So I'm quite, happy about that. For the names of my actual characters, I decided to sort of follow a couple of different things. First of all, because I'm using the sort of purples of the Jordan Sorcery, heraldry, and branding, I thought I would bring in a little bit of a cat theme as well, because obviously there's cats in my logo, in my heraldry. So that is part of it. But then I also wanted to just build in the sort of historical, the archiving aspect of it as well. So that is why they're the archivists chapter. So they are archivists, they are like librarians, they are historians, archaeologists. They are going around the galaxy. They are trying to gather up all of this ancient Space Marine Imperium technology to protect it. I mean, I know obviously there's stuff about technology within the Imperium, but this is Imperial like war equipment and armories and armor. So that is why they are trying to keep and use all of this antique weaponry. They are using old Land Raiders, they are using old dreadnoughts, they have not crossed the Rubicon, they're not becoming Primaris, because they are very much about finding, documenting, classifying, and preserving the past, and they feel like the best way to preserve the past, the safest place in the galaxy, they're not going to put all of this stuff into a fortress monastery and lock it up somewhere, because there's nowhere safer than on their own bodies. That is why they wear like Mark 7 armor and older. That is why they're using all of this old equipment, because they fully believe that it is safest in their hands about their person, and that they can then preserve the history of the Imperium. So they're a successor chapter of the Ultramarines, so perhaps Gulliman has kind of tasked them with going out and sort of keeping that history close. So that is what they have been doing. The naming convention, so I've got my different captain, my different character names. As I say, the Archivist chapter, so my captain is Captain Felis Baldassar, and the reason that I've gone with that is because the most famous, earliest archivist in history is a chap called Baldassar Bonifacio. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but he was in Venice in the 1650s. And he wrote a treaty called De Archivis Liber Singularis in 1632, in fact. That is the first known treaty on the management of archives. So it kind of feels like that is fun to tie it back to that archiving sort of thing. So we've got Baldassar is my captain, and then Felis, because that is part of the actual sort of Latin name, the genus or the classification, the scientific terminology for cats. So they are Felis catus, which is the domestic house cat. So obviously bringing those in from the heraldry. So I thought Felis Baldassar was a good name for a Space Marine captain. And then the names for my librarian, my tech marine, and the dreadnought are taken from different scientists and naturalists who helped to determine the classification of different types of cat at different points in history. So we've got my librarian is Urxelben, and my tech marine is Linnaeus, and then the dreadnought is Constantine. And that is because they each have played a role in the naming of cat taxonomy over the years. So Carl Linnaeus in 1758 came up with Felis catus for domestic cat, and then we had Felis catus domesticus was proposed by Johann Christian Polycarp Urxelben in 1777. And then my favourite in 1904 was Konstantin Saturnin, which already pretty good. Konstantin Saturnin proposed Felis Demon for black cats, because, you know, he's probably lived with some of them. But yeah, I thought that those were all, you know, very interesting, very appropriate names for Space Marine characters. And then, yeah, they also, you know, they have this sort of this joint thing from real life. And I like to bring that kind of stuff in. It just is a neat little theme in the background. The actual squads have all then got names that are themed around parts of a cat. So the tactical squad are going to be called Carnicile, and that is because that is the teeth that they have at the back that are quite sharp. So dogs and cats have these. These are sort of sharp back teeth that can shear through meats and things like that. That kind of felt, you know, that's the tactical squad. They're the sort of, they are doing the business and the sort of main, they're the main guys who are in the center of the action, I suppose. And then I've got the Fang squad, which is the Terminator squad, because they are at the front. They're the piercing weapon, so they're going to be deployed in the Land Raider, and they're going to be jumping out, and they're going to be getting involved. The Land Raider itself is called Panthera, which is part of a sort of higher level taxonomy for cats. And then the Scout squad are called Dewclaw, which is, if you've ever seen a cat's paw, they have like a little thumb, which is kind of higher up on the paw, and it's like a little claw that sort of doesn't look like it's doing quite as much as the front claws. Dogs have them as well. In dogs, they've become evolutionary redundancies. I don't think they do anything in dogs. Apparently cats do still use them for like bracing things and all this kind of stuff. But there's these weird little thumbs. So I quite like that for the Scouts, because they are off on the side. They're not doing any of the main business that the Terminators and the Tactical Squad are doing. They're doing something a little bit different, and kind of, they still have an impact, but in a slightly different way. So that is the name of my squads, the name of my characters, and the broad sort of theme of the chapter. More specifically, I was talking with a good friend of mine who has a Necron army, and that was the first game that I played with this force, and he really loves the Ghoul Stars, or the Ghost Stars sort of area of Imperium space, the edge of space, which is kind of where it's kind of like a Bermuda Triangle in space, but it's kind of got Lovecraftian horrors and all sorts of weird stuff. Strange things happen. No Imperial expedition into the depths of the Ghoul Stars has ever returned. Tyranids have gone in there, Hive fleets have become confused and then fled and gone in different directions. It's just a really cool, odd area of space, which I don't think has loads of lore, so it feels like a good place that you can do kind of weird, cool stuff. There are Necrons who live there, which obviously fits with his army. So I quite like the idea that, because the Night Lords were also, I think their origin planet is near there as well. So I quite like the idea that part of the Archivist chapter's remit has been to chase down sort of lost technologies because of the Horus Heresy. So they are chasing down some Night Lords, and they've gone into the Ghoul Stars, and perhaps, you know, they've become lost a little bit, and they've been, you know, there's an odd sort of time dilation and all sorts of weird stuff like that as well, which is kind of a meta explanation for why sometimes they would be playing in 2nd edition games of 40k as opposed to 11th edition. I quite like that. So I think there's a lot of scope for weird and wonderful stuff there as well. Lots of interesting storytelling opportunities. So I'm going to go with that. Oh, and a very, very cool thing. So I have talked before about the old Citadel case. This is what I'm using at the moment. I've cut out, thanks to some suggestions, I've cut out a load of the sponge in order to allow me to actually carry the Land Raider and the Dreadnought without issue. Unfortunately, that has, just in some test movements around the house, we've got that sort of the almost self-contradictory nature of the sort of sponge pressure, where it's actually rubbed off some of the paint on the Land Raider tracks, like almost immediately. So that's kind of a shame. But it's not going to be a long-term problem. I'm going to be using this case for my trip down to Nottingham, just to make sure that everything's super safe. But in the long term, I'm going to be getting some magnets and putting magnets on the bottom of the miniatures, because the absolutely awesome people at Frontier Wargaming have sent me an amazing, absolutely amazing army carry case. Look at this. Totally, totally stunning. Yes, that is engraved on the front. The Joylin Sorcery Heraldry, which again is tied into the actual heraldry of my Space Marine chapter, and the actual colours and the scheme and the feel. I am so grateful to the guys at Frontier Wargaming for sending me this. I use their paint desk, which is absolutely amazing. I've used that for this particular project. I've used that for other projects as well. But this thing, it's awesome. As you can see, it's got the amazing front, which you can get engraved, but then it's got this sort of fold down front, which you've then also got like a very nice work area, which you can use with the plastic things here. And then you've got a load of drawers that are sort of preset, pre-assembled, and have got magnetic strips underneath. So that is where I'm going to put the magnets underneath the bases so that they can live in here and they don't slide around and they're all fine. I think there's probably enough space for the Land Raider to fit in here. I need to check that. Can definitely fit the Dreadnought. Obviously, a lot of different flexible options. So as I say, in time, this is going to become a permanent home for the army once it's complete. But for now, I'm just going to be using the Citadel case to go across the country because it's such a long journey. I don't want to risk damaging this case on its first outing. But really awesome stuff. So I'm very, very pleased. This project, I'm so grateful to so many folks. Not only, Frontier Wargaming and the 7th City Collectibles who sent me the Land Raider, but also so many of you have been absolutely awesome, have approached me, have asked me if I wanted any retro Marines and offered different squads and all sorts of cool stuff. I've turned down almost every single one of those offers just because, again, I didn't want to overwhelm myself with just too much stuff because, I'd love to have a massive multi-thousand point army of amazing retro models contributed by the community. That would be awesome. But also, there is no way on earth that I would paint that even to this level. It's just something that is a mental block that would be way too much. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. You're so generous and it's so awesome. I really feel like this has been a proper sort of community project in a way. And I've really enjoyed making these diaries and talking about this journey. It's helped me with the milestones. It's helped me progress on things. It's helped me sort of work towards stuff. Obviously, it has helped me with the actual creation of history videos that I've tied into this. So there's a couple more that I'm thinking about. As I say, certainly there's going to be the Tactical Marine ones, which focuses on the journey to the Strike Force boxed set. But then I think there's potentially another one or two that I might make in the future as well, if I've got time. There's going to be more diary entries, at least one more, where I will talk about the game that I have in Nottingham, and potentially some future plans and some other stuff as well. But yeah, I have really, really enjoyed this. I hope that you guys have enjoyed it as well. There have been some lovely comments, some very supportive comments on videos, so thank you for that. And although there is still more to come in this series, I am thinking about what my sort of winter project will be and how I might do another diary series with history videos as well, because I've really enjoyed this as a sort of combined format. I think that would be a fantasy army, potentially, probably my Marienburg army, but maybe some element within it to make it more self-contained, building a battle march force, something like that. But if you've got any suggestions, leave them down in the comments. If there's things that you would like to see more of and less of in these kind of diaries, I'd love to hear about that as well. And until next time, when I will be talking about my battle with Wib, and there's going to be other stuff as well. I'm going to be doing travel diaries on my Patreon. I've got some really cool stuff that's going on whilst I'm down there. If you are going to PeachCon on Sunday, the Sunday that this video is airing, then I'll be doing a history talk about Warhammer. I'll be doing a live Quizhammer quiz of trivia questions about Warhammer and Games Workshop history. Both of those I might find a way to record in the future and put them on either Patreon or YouTube at some point down the line. But yeah, you can be there first. You can experience them for the first time. And live, you can ask questions and get involved as well. But yeah, really exciting stuff. Cannot wait. And until next time, because I'm just going to go off rambling even more, thank you very much for watching. I'm Jordan, and this is Jordan Sorcery.